Welcome and thanks everybody for coming out today. I was really excited when I joined Saskatchewan Pension Plan, actually back in 1986 I guess is when it actually started. For those of you who are not familiar, it has been around for a long time. There's been some great changes to Saskatchewan Pension Plan over the years, and I became actually employed with them here just not that long ago, and I was excited when I saw an interview on the BNN with Derek Foster, and he was talking about Saskatchewan Pension Plan, and one of his lines was, join a pension plan for the worried boomer. Join the Saskatchewan Pension Plan, it's a no-brainer. And so I quickly grabbed the book and was reading through it frantically, and I thought, if you could only come to Saskatchewan and speak to everybody, because Saskatchewan Pension Plan it's a small plan, people still don't know a lot about it, and I've left information bags on everybody's table. You have a little lunch bag for our little packet and save theme. There is information inside, and please, I encourage you to visit our website to kind of take a look at the plan. But I was excited to see that he had written about us in his book, and I called him up, and because he was coming across Saskatchewan, he decided that he would indeed come and talk to some people in our province as well. So with that, I have a little questionnaire that I do ask you to fill out after he's done. Some people wanted to fill it out early, but I think it's probably appropriate for after. Good. And just so you know, I brought a little giveaway as well, so I really encourage you to fill them out. And I have 2 tickets for the Saskatoon Wine Premiere that takes place in September. So some lucky winner will get that. So again, I'll collect them after, and without further ado, please welcome Derek Foster.
Okay, good afternoon. My name is Derek Foster. My claim to fame, if you will, is I was Canada's youngest retiree. I retired at the age of 34. And today, quickly, because I know we're running short on time, I'll talk about how I did it, what I did, and then we can have an opportunity to ask questions at the end. Basically, when I was in university, I started investing in stocks, and what I did was I worked at a company called Radio Shack. A lot of you have probably heard of it. It's now called The Source. And a lot of people were coming into the store and buying things and whatnot. So about a year before I was working there, the share price was trading at $60 a share. And when I started working there, it had fallen to $24 a share. So I thought this is a great buy. People are buying the stuff. So I took my life savings at that time, about $5,000, and I bought shares in Radio Shack. And within a year, those shares went all the way from $24 down to $12. So I wasn't too happy, so I had a summer job or whatever. I saved a bit more money, so I bought more shares at 12, because if they're a good deal at 24, they're a great deal at 12. And they quickly went down to $6, at which time I sold them, and I swore I'd never buy stocks again. So that was my first foray into the stock market. I started reading tons and tons about the stock market. This is pre-internet, this is early 90s. Read tons and tons of books. Now, a lot of the books were really, really good. Gave a lot of good information. A lot of the books were really, really crummy as well. I mean, a lot of investment books out there are really quite crappy books. None of mine are crappy. All mine are good. So, you know. But anyway, so I came away with the idea over, this took a long time because I'm a slow learner, but over a few years, I basically came away with the idea that most investors, most people that are investing are doing it the entire wrong way, because most people, they're treating the stock market like a casino. They're hoping to buy something for $10 and sell it for 20 or sell it for 50 and make a quick gain, okay? So 10, 12 years ago, we had people scrambling to buy shares in, let's say, Nortel or something, and it's gone bankrupt, okay? So I began to look at investing, and I said, the key, as far as I'm concerned, is dividends, which means the company essentially sends you a check every 3 months, okay? And you automatically get this income stream. So the example I give is the typical person, if you have some seeds, let's call it your investment capital, okay, what you want to do is you take the typical investor, what they want to do is they want to plant the seeds and they want to grow a tree. And as soon as a tree grows, they quickly want to chop it down and sell it off for firewood. Make a quick gain, get out of there, okay? Very hard to do, okay? It's not very successful generally. Same approach, I have seeds, okay, I want to plant a tree and I want the tree to grow, but then what I want to do is I want to harvest the fruit. So I want to get the fruit, because then I can come back the next year and harvest the fruit again. And the next year and harvest the fruit again, and again, and again, and again. So over time I realized that's the way to invest. Now the problem is, 95% of companies that trade on the stock market are not good investments. They're crummy businesses. Okay, an example I can give you is the airline industry. The airline industry's got to be the worst business you can get into, because it costs millions, and I hope nobody works in the airline industry, by the way. I don't want to make any enemies today. But it costs millions and billions of dollars basically to get a fleet of 747s or comparable, you know, I don't know the airplane models, but these big jetliner planes. Costs a lot of money to have pilots flying them, ground crew to maintain them. You don't want parts falling off mid-flight. Okay, then there's a ton of money you have to spend for the infrastructure to be able to take off and land at all the airports, because they need security, they need air traffic control, they need snow clearing equipment, they need de-icing equipment, and the list goes on and on. If times are good, you'll make a razor-thin profit, but it'll only ever be razor-thin, because the reality is, if you go to a travel agent and they want to book you a flight to Hawaii or something, and you can get it for $1,200, the very first thing 99% of you are going to do is you're going to check online to see if you can get a better deal. If you can get tickets for $8.99, you're going to book that. So, because it's so competitive, companies never make a lot of money. Okay, they never do. Okay? That's in good times. In bad times, they lose a ton of money. Because think about it, supposing you have a husband and wife and they make the same amount of money, and suddenly one of them gets laid off. So the family income is, let's say, cut in half. The last thing you're going to do is come home and say, hey honey, I just got laid off, let's go to Hawaii. You're not going to do it. So people stop flying, businesses stop flying, and the airlines lose a ton of money. Like 10, 12 years ago, there was a reporter who was interviewing Richard Branson, and she said, you know, Richard, he's a billionaire, he owns Virgin Airlines. And she was saying, Richard, what's the secret to becoming a millionaire? And he's like, that's the easiest thing in the world. All you have to do is start as a billionaire and buy an airline. Okay? Terrible, terrible business. And most businesses are terrible. So the first key to investing is to avoid the crappy businesses, which are 95% of them. Okay, then you're miles ahead of everybody else. So what would make a good business? Okay, very simply. Okay, I'll give you an example. Anybody brush their teeth today? Show of hands. Anyone? Anyone? Anyone didn't? Odds are you brush your teeth, and you brush your teeth every day. Okay, and there's two dominant brands. It's Crest and Colgate. Okay, there's a few other minor brands, but Crest and Colgate are the main brands. Now, if you think about that, that is a wonderful business because you brush your teeth every day. Same situation, husband, wife, you make the same amount of money, one of you gets laid off, you don't come home and say, hey honey, I lost my job today, but I have a great money-saving idea. Let's stop brushing our teeth. Okay? It's not going to happen. Now, if you take a look at the annual report, I own shares in Colgate, so I was reading the annual report, and when I first bought the shares, or right before I bought them, I was reading this report, and some information jumped out and grabbed me. And it said, Colgate has paid uninterrupted, without stop, uninterrupted dividends since 1895. Okay, so that's 117 years of consecutive dividend payments. Now, I don't know too many 117-year-olds out there, so it's fair to say that anybody who's ever bought shares in Colgate has received their quarterly dividend check. In other words, has been able to go in and harvest the fruit with the analogy I first gave. The second line I read in the report was equally interesting, and I'm fast-forwarding it to today. Colgate has increased their dividends for 50 consecutive years. So that means if I had a great rich uncle that gave me enough shares, hypothetically when I was born, I didn't, but if I did, to give me $1,000 in dividend income when I was born, when I'm 1 year old, I'd have get maybe $1,200, then 14, then 16, then 18, then 2, then 2,300, 2,600, 3, and so on and so forth. Fast forward to today, I'm 42 years old now. It's quite possible I might be making $60,000 or $70,000 a year in passive dividend income from that original investment. So that's what I began focusing on. I began focusing on these stocks that pay me dividends, that send me a check every 3 months. And I did this all through my 20s. In my early 30s, I began to think about things. And maybe you've had this thought as well. But if you have a job, that interferes with your free time. Okay? And I began to think about that, and I thought, you know, how much money do I need to stop working? I began asking myself that question. The funny thing is, if I ask people, how much do you need to stop working? Automatically people think I need $1 million, I need $2 million, whatever. And you know what? It's totally the wrong answer. Because if I said, how much money do you need to live on now? You'd say, I need $50,000 a year, I need $80,000 a year, whatever the figure is. But the minute we plan for retirement, you talk about this big lump sum. And it's putting the cart before the horse. So I said, no, that's not what I need. What I need is an income stream. So I need enough dividend-paying stocks that meets my living expenses, and then I can stop working. Forget about this nest egg approach. Focus on the fruit, the dividends, okay? So I began buying, I was buying stocks and whatnot, and I began to look at things. And the other thing I began to realize, the final piece of the puzzle that let me retire, was the fact that in Canada we live in a highly taxed country. I mean, we can debate whether it's a good thing or a bad thing, but it's a fact, okay? But the funny thing is, the absolute worst way to make money in Canada is to get a job and work for it. Because when you work, you pay the highest possible taxes, higher tax rate than any other way to earn income, okay? You also have to pay CPP. You also have to pay EI, but you're not done yet, because when you're working, there's a lot of indirect costs. There might be childcare expenses if you're at that stage, commuting costs, wardrobe expense. I don't have much of a wardrobe expense, but there could be, okay? Professional dues, union dues, da-da-da-da-da, and the list just goes on and on and on. And I said, I don't think I can afford to work here, but if I stop working, a lot of these expenses just disappear. Now, the interesting thing is dividend-sourced income, especially Canadian dividend-sourced income, is totally favorably taxed. And I give an example in my second book, The Lazy Investor. But basically, you can, and the book's, it's changed slightly because the government's changed the rules, but at that time, and this is Ontario-based, but Saskatchewan will be similar, you could earn $48,000 a year without paying a single penny in tax from Canadian-sourced dividend income. So I began to look at it and said, supposing you have twin brothers, one guy makes $48,000 of passive dividend, Canadian-sourced dividend income, the other guy works and makes $90,000 a year. Okay, great. If he's making 90, he's bringing home, I don't know, 70 or something. And then he's also paying CPP, he's also paying EI, he might have commuting costs, he might have childcare expenses, he might have dry cleaning expenses, the list just goes on and on and on. It's quite possible that the person receiving the $48,000 of passive dividend income is actually better off in disposable income. So I began to look at that and I put it all together. At the age of 34, I stopped working on a fairly modest income, okay? But there was no tax, there was no expenses related, and I quit working at 34. After that, because I'm not that creative, I wrote my first book called Stop Working, okay? And for whatever reason, the book took off. It became a national bestseller, which was kind of cool, quite honestly. So I did that, whatever, and then after that I went to my wife and I said, you know, I really like this book writing thing, I think I want to write another book, I mean this is good. And my wife looked at me and she said, but you don't know anything else, okay, you have known nothing else, what are you going to write about? And I said, no, I have an idea. At that time we were thinking of what we're going to do for our kids, okay, because we have 5 kids, fairly big family by today's standards. That's another lesson for you. If you retire early, make sure you have a hobby or you end up with a lot of kids. But anyhow, so we were planning on what we could do for the kids. And I said, okay, in my first book I talked about all the 9 criteria I look for in a company, okay, because most people invest blindly or they invest in a hot thing. Ooh, Apple looks good, I'll invest in that. Those are the same people that invested in Nortel 10, 12 years ago and they're not happy about it, or RIM 5 years ago and they're not happy about it, okay? Those are lottery tickets, forget it, okay? But in the book I list the 9 basic criteria. You're looking for companies that are recession-proof. You're looking for companies with long dividend history. Okay, you're looking for companies that sell a product simple enough for a 6-year-old to illustrate with a crayon. Okay, keep it super simple. So that's what I did in my first book. The second book, the subtitle was Start with $50 and No Investment Knowledge. And the point here, it was a book written basically for people who don't know anything about investing or don't have a lot of money. Okay, and at that time I was thinking of my kids. All it is it's dealing with what's called DRIPs. DRIPs are dividend reinvestment plans. So what I did hypothetically is I find, let's say, ABC company, it fits all my criteria, outlined in the first book, and I buy, let's say, 100 shares. And let's say it's paying a 4% dividend a year, which would be 1% a quarter. And I give that to my kids. So they have 100 shares, okay? 3 months later, a dividend gets paid. Well, they don't get cash, they automatically buy more shares. So after 3 months, they have 101 shares, okay? 3 months later, again, the dividend gets paid, but it's automatically reinvested. But at this point, they don't have 102 shares because they're going to get a dividend on the original 100 shares they bought, but they're also going to get a dividend on that one extra share their dividends have bought in the last quarter. So after the second time, it's 102.01 shares. The next one is 103.02 shares. The next one's 104, blah, blah, blah. And it just keeps growing and compounding. It's like putting it on autopilot and the money automatically compounds and grows. It sounds boring, but it's the same as if you have a snowball and you have wet snow and you begin rolling it. Okay, the snowball gets bigger and bigger and bigger. That's what the strategy in The Lazy Investor was. Now, if you want a real life example, just Google the name Grace Groner, G-R-A-C-E, Groner, G-R-O-N-E-R. Real life story. This lady was a secretary for Abbott Laboratories. Took a number of decades, but she invested $180 to buy 3 shares of Abbott Labs, enrolled in the DRIP, tucked them away in the drawer. When they opened them decades later, it grown to over $7 million. Very effective strategy. Okay, so I talked about that in my second book. My third book was Money for Nothing. It was being able to buy stocks more cheaply. Okay, and I'm not going to get into that. It's dealing with put options and being able to, people say, well, options are risky. They're not. It's a simple strategy, but I'm not going to get into that today. The fourth book was more basic low-risk investing strategies, okay? I was getting inundated with emails about 3-4 years ago when the markets went through a bit of turbulence there, 2008, 2009, and people were emailing me and asking me, so that book talks about like investing in preferred shares, index funds, whatever. Well, I'll give you another example. Supposing you have somebody who's 50 years old, let's say, and say they have, I don't know, $100,000 in their RSP, okay? And they have $100,000 left on their mortgage, okay? This is conceivable for a lot of people. So what the typical person doing, they absolutely cannot afford to lose their money. So what they're doing right now is they'll take that $100,000 and they'll, let's say, go to their bank and buy GICs. And they might earn 2% on those GICs, right? And then for their mortgage, they'll go in and they'll borrow that $100,000 back on their mortgage and they'll pay the bank 4%. Okay, so it's not a good deal for them because they're only earning 2 and they're paying 4. Well, there's a way you can set it up, and actually TD Waterhouse does this self-directed mortgage, but you can put your mortgage right inside your RSP. So now, you're gonna write the same mortgage check every month, but your RSP is now gonna earn the higher 4% instead of the original 2%. Very low risk strategy, anybody can do it. There's another chapter in there about how to buy stocks and never lose money guaranteed. That sounds like a load of BS, okay, but it can be done. In the investment world, there's 2 main kinds of investments. Okay, there's stocks and there's bonds. Okay, bonds are interest-bearing certificates. So if you buy a bond, hypothetically, if you can't really do this, but if I buy if I put $100 into a 5% 10-year bond, what will happen is I'll get $5 in interest every year for 10 years. At the end of 10 years, I'll get my $100 back. Okay. There's another kind of bond called a strip bond, where I put a small amount of money in today, I collect nothing for, let's say, 10 years, but at the end of 10 years, I get $100 back. So I get all my interest at the very end. So hypothetically, I could put $50 in today, collect no interest for 10 years, but at the end of 10 years, get my $100 back. So let's go back to the same individual. $100,000 in their RSP, absolutely cannot afford to lose a penny. Simplest thing in the world, take $50,000, and I'm using, it could be 40, it could be 60, depending on interest rates. Buy Government of Canada strip bonds, which guarantees him $100,000 at some future point in time, guarantees, okay? So he's taken 50, he's guaranteed that he'll have his 100, so he's protected his 100. With the other 50,000, he buys quality, dividend-paying blue chip stocks, whether it's any of the big banks, it could be Bell Canada, it could be Enbridge, it could be Coca-Cola, it could be Colgate, whatever. And then he waits. Now, if the Earth collides with the moon, okay, and all our banks go bankrupt, and Enbridge goes bankrupt, and Coca-Cola goes bankrupt, and Colgate goes bankrupt, and Johnson & Johnson goes bankrupt, whatever, he still has his $100,000. So it's a low-risk way to invest with guaranteeing you won't lose money. The catch, the trick is if the stock markets do really, really well, he'll earn less. But for a lot of people that want to make sure they don't lose what they already have, it's a very viable strategy, okay? My 5th book was called The Idiot Millionaire, and the reason I call it that is because I became a millionaire in my late 30s, okay? And I did nothing special, okay? The only thing I did was I started buying dividend-paying stocks when I was young, okay? Had I not started investing, the book would have simply been called The Idiot, okay? Which is not really a great title. Now, in that book, I list between 40 and 50 what I call idiot-proof stocks. Okay, Colgate would be in there because the only likelihood of a Colgate going bankrupt is if you all decide en masse that you're all going to stop brushing your teeth. And that's very unlikely to happen. Something like an Apple or a Rim can go in and out of fashion very, very quickly, but people always brush their teeth. And Colgate and Crest have been the dominant brands since people started brushing their teeth. Doesn't change, okay? Another example, financial companies can carry some risk because they borrow and lend money, okay? If the people that they've lent money to can't pay them back, the banks have problems. I learned that the hard way because I bought shares in Bank of America down in the US, and I lost a lot of money because the housing market imploded. So there's a couple of financial companies in there that don't carry that risk, and all of you are very familiar with them. Visa or MasterCard, okay? I'm sure if I asked, hey, who here, let's use Visa, who here has a Visa card? I'm sure 90% of you would raise your hand. And if I say, hey, show me your Visa card, okay, and you whipped out your Visa card, what we would notice is you would probably have a TD Visa, I'm just assuming, because you have the TD label on your shirt. You might have a Scotiabank Visa, you might have a CIBC Visa, you might have a Royal Bank Visa, okay? They're all a little different, and the reason they're different is because when you use your credit card, you're not borrowing money from Visa, you're borrowing money from the issuing bank. Visa and MasterCard charge a fee to be able to issue their cards, to be able to use their system, and they also get a tiny little piece of the transaction every time you swipe your card. So it's an idiot-proof, fail-safe business. I mean, it doesn't require a lot of employees to run because it's just a lot of wires all over the place. Okay, you know, when you make a purchase and run your card through, somebody from Visa doesn't come over and do it for you. You do it yourself. It's all self-serve. They make money hand over fist, and it's a growing business because the whole world's moving more towards electronic payments. Okay. Coca-Cola is another idiot-proof business. Stupid example, but if you walk to your local Walmart and look at the front, there's a couple different vending machines selling pop. If you look at them side by side, there's a Great Value pop and there's a Coca-Cola, there's a Coke or Pepsi, okay? The Great Value or the Walmart brand is selling for 35 cents probably, it's the same as Ontario. The Coke is selling for $1. That extra 65, now compare the two products, they both come in the same can, they both contain sugar, water, food coloring, whatever, right? But the extra 60 or 65 cents that Coke is able to extract, or Pepsi, times tens of millions of people that drink it every day, is a huge amount of money. Phenomenal. I just want to use Coke as an example. for the dividend growth strategy. If you've ever seen those old signs where it says drink Coca-Cola, in the bottom right-hand corner, it says 5 cents. So drink Coca-Cola 5 cents. If we were to all climb in a time machine and go back 50, 60 years, okay, and got out, we take a look at Coca-Cola, what we would notice is the drinks were actually 5 cents. People, it was a treat. People drank maybe 2 a month or something. So let's say 25 Cokes a year at that time, okay? And at that time, Coke was only sold in the United States, Canada, and maybe a few European countries. So basically maybe 200 million consumers at that time. Get back in the time machine, fast forward to today, get out. Okay, the Cokes aren't 5 cents, they're $1. They're 20 times as expensive. The average person doesn't drink 25 Cokes a year now, they drink way too much. They drink, and when I say Coke, I mean pop in general. They drink like 300, they drink 1 a day. Okay, so consumption has gone up tenfold, let's say. The amount of consumers, Coke is sold in over 200 countries around the world now. Now, probably almost half the world cannot afford a Coke, but the other half can, for sure. So you're looking at around, roughly, ballpark, 4 billion potential consumers. Okay, 4 billion consumers that buy it. So you do the math, and this is rough back of the envelope, just to give you the idea of the dividend growth. The price of the product is 20 times expensive. People drink 10 times as much, so 20 times 10 is 200. And there's 20 times as many people drinking it, so 20 times 10 is 200, times 20 is 4,000. Rough back of the envelope, for every dollar they were making 50, 60 years ago, they're making $4,000 today. It's a no-brainer, idiot-proof investment because of this, everybody in the world gets thirsty. Okay, and as countries get richer, they tend to buy more bottled drinks. It's just automatic. And the other interesting thing is I've spent a lot of years in Asia. Okay, people say, how about Heinz ketchup? That's a great investment. Well, no. How many Asians put ketchup on their food? How often do you put ketchup on Chinese food or Vietnamese food or Thai food? You don't. It's not as good a business. But Coke, everybody drinks it at every meal. Now, if you read the annual report, the average North American drinks like 300 and some odd pops a year. Okay? The average Mexican drinks 600. Okay? The average Chinese person drinks 29. The average Indian drinks like 10 or 11. There's huge growth potential. It's a no-brainer, idiot-proof investment that will grow, grow, grow. So in that book, I basically talk about what I deem to be idiot-proof investments. Okay, and one thing I want to add here is, with investing or with anything, people are always attracted to the complicated. Okay, there's a story about, when there was a space race in the 60s, and the Russians and the Americans were competing to see who could, go to space, who could go around to the moon first, who could do this, who could do that. And they realized quite quickly when they went to outer space that a typical ballpoint pen doesn't work in space because it needs gravity to work. There's no gravity in space. So, of course, the US, being the US, spent millions of dollars and got their best scientists to work on this anti-gravity pen that actually worked in a zero-gravity environment. They were successful. And they thought, ha-ha, the Russians will never be able to do that because they don't have the budget. There we go. The Russians will never be able to do that because they don't have the budget. But you know what the Russians did? They just brought up pencils. Okay? So the point is sometimes a simple approach...
Well, you know what happened? The pencil shavings jammed the computer.
Oh, is that what it is?
And it cost them way more.
Okay.
They just bought the pens at 25.
So they have to bring 20 sharpening pencils. That's right. But the point of the story is sometimes the simple things work the best. Okay, and so those are idiot-proof companies. The final book is The Worried Boomer. Okay, it's the only book that doesn't apply to me because I'm not a boomer and I'm not really all that worried, quite honestly. But 2012 is kind of a watershed year here in Canada because the baby boom started in 1947. So if you do the math, the first baby boomers are turning 65 this year. And for the next few decades, there's going to be a wave of people retiring. I mean, we've all known this for decades. I get tons of emails from people who are very, very worried. So I wrote that book. Now, the example I give is, the analogy I give is when I was a kid, I was afraid of the dark. Now, if my mom came in and flipped on the light and, once the light's on, I can check in the closet, check under the bed, check around, make sure, there's no monsters or whatever, I was fine to sleep. Okay, after I checked it. It's the same with the worried boomers because people have this black fog around, am I going to have enough? I don't know, I need $1 million, I need $2 million, whatever, but they don't really know. So in the book, what I do is I go line by line listing, what are your current expenses, boom, 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 workbook section, and then what are your current income, boom, 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 compare the two, are you running a surplus or deficit? It's a no-brainer, but that's what you should be doing. Second step, what kind of retirement do you want in the future? I mean, because some people want different things. Figure out what it's going to cost, inflation adjustments, it's all in the workbook section, and then they give a number. This is how much, forget about this $1 million BS or whatever, I need this much money to live on a year. Okay, great. Well, what's their first step? Well, to me, the first step is, and I know it sounds stupid, I would pick up the phone, there's an 800 number in there, I would call Canada Pension Office and say, how much am I going to get? Okay, there's so many people, everybody that works pays into Canada Pension, there's so many people that have absolutely no clue how much they're going to get. Spend 10 minutes on the phone, find out how much you're going to get. So your number is this much. This is how much I need for retirement. Okay, I called Canada Pension based on the variables. They're going to cover this much of it. They're not going to cover all of it, trust me. But they'll cover this much of it. Okay, so my number shrinks here. Second step, we'll call old age security for some people, depending on your income level. It doesn't start getting clawed back to like your income's in the mid 60,000s, and it's clawed back very slowly. So it might be a source of income for some people. Okay, so CPP pays this much, old age security hypothetically pays this much, let's just say. Okay, what do you do with the rest? Well, now you're looking at your personal investments, you're looking at dividend-paying stocks, you're looking at tax-free savings accounts, you're looking for RSPs, you're looking at, you're going to downsize your house to free up money, whatever. And finally, the reason I'm here, quite honestly, is I researched the Saskatchewan pension plan. Okay, now I want to be clear with everybody here. If you close your eyes, what do you see? You close your eyes, what do you see? Nothing. That's exactly how much the Saskatchewan pension plan is paying me to speak in Saskatchewan this week, okay? Just so we're clear on that. They're a super cheap organization. I'm not saying that in a derogatory fashion. So know this. Know this, okay? Know this. First of all, if anybody has investments with that fund, okay, they are being very miserly with your money because it tends to be your dollars. And the thing that attracted to me is their management expense fees are really, really quite low. It's a good plan, that's why I'm here. The second reason I'm here is because my wife and I, we sold our house and we're traveling across North America, so if I give a few talks, it makes my trip tax deductible. So that's the second reason I'm here. Anyhow, so that's basically it. The SPP is another little cookie jar that you can draw money from, sort of thing, to fund your retirement. Okay? That's about it. Thank you very much.